And welcome to another Round the Rotary podcast with me, your host, JP Warren. And before we get kicked off, I got to say that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specializes in project engineering and well site supervision in all disciplines of the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com. I swear, if you say Capital Petroleum Consultants that many times, it always jumbles up. To see what CPC can do for you today. And with us in the studio, I am pumped to have our guest right now. And I've known this gentleman for probably about 10 years now, 10, 11 years, 11 years, because that's when I left Noble Drilling. You actually hired me out of Noble Drilling to go to Alice Chalmers, and then 2 weeks later was Archer. So in the studio today, we have Mark Patterson, the founder and owner of Sage Brothers Consultants. So it's his first podcast, and we're actually doing this on we started recording these on Clubhouse, and I'm not sure if we're going to continue doing that, not recording, but opening up Clubhouse so people can kind of get that live experience before, and we can open it up after for questions. And you can find Round the Rotary on YouTube for the visuals. You can find us on Instagram and all that. So thanks for tuning in, everyone. We know you have a choice of podcasts. I'm really excited about this conversation we're about to have, because again, you're one of the best guys I know. You brought me from my first job in the oil field to my next one, which really kind of set me up in my career after that. So you're pretty pivotal in my career, whether you know that or not. So again, thanks for being here today.
Well, JP, I want to say first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate that very much, and I'm really looking forward to the time we're spending together here today. I will say that I want to thank you for joining us at Alice Chalmers, because one of the guys I was working with, who was instrumental in bringing you on, Scott Keller, a good friend of ours. Yeah, and Scott, I can still call him a friend today, and I think he is me as well, because he was able to bring you on to spend the time in Saudi and manage our Saudi operations for that period of time, so that he didn't have to stay over there all that time.
That's what it was. That's what it was. Let's call it a spade a spade. It's not like Scott sent me over there to fill a position. He sent me over there because he didn't want to go.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I was nervous about going too, but it was such a cool experience. I mean, the people I got to meet there, the food, the experience, just living in a completely different. I loved it. I enjoyed it.
I tell you, it was one of those for me as well. That period of time when I was going back and forth to the Middle East, and Scott and I actually had made a trip previous to that to Malaysia, to Kuala Lumpur together, and so those are some memories that are really great. And the time spent over there with the Sheikh, in the joint venture that you're part of. I don't know if you ever actually met the Sheikh or not, but you met a bunch of his people.
I think I did.
Those were a lot of fun times.
That was a very big deal to meet the Sheikh.
Oh, it was.
It was a huge deal to it was always like, oh, he's coming. And literally it was like a celebrity. It's like don't look at him. You have 2 minutes with him, shake his hand, don't ask them. It was very structured. It was very cautious.
And I don't know if you've read the book Blood and Money, I think it is. Yeah, Blood and Oil. It came out last year, and it's definitely a read. It's about the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who's really taken over.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's the whole story of that, and it's really interesting. But it speaks in this book about this, the Saudi sheikhs and the princesses and all these type of things, and their palaces that they have over there, and how they have these rooms, these huge rooms that are just lined by couches and all that stuff. And I've been in the sheikh's home in one of those rooms, and I'm reading that book, and I'm going, I was there.
You can see it.
Talk about a strange experience to know how, what that's like. But it was a pretty exciting time for me, who was 50 at the time or less. But that was a great experience for me. And one of the cool stories about the Sheikh is because I was on the board of directors of that joint venture over there, and we had a board meeting in London. And so we met in London, and we went to this nightclub over in London. And my wife and I are sitting at the table in this nightclub having dinner, and then the dancing started. And we go to the dance floor, and the Sheikh and his wife are out there with us on the dance floor, and we're all dancing together. And my wife leans up to me, and she says, "Dancing with the Sheikh takes place every day." I went, "No."
Honey, don't tell me that. Otherwise, I'm going to start messing up and not being cool. Like, don't get me out of my zone. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. No, it was a cool experience. I'm glad you had a good time over there, and I do think it was an educational time for both of us.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was just the experience of being exposed to different how people do business over there, and just kind of how it worked. It was just a very like a personal growth and also professional growth. I mean, it sounds pretty cool to say that you were stationed in Saudi Arabia. I feel like, you know what I mean. That part's the cool part of it, but I mean also like. It was just like a boringly fun time because there's not much to do. There's no movies, there's no bars, and nothing like that. But it was a boringly exciting time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if it was you or who, but I remember getting a picture sent to me email where one of the hands was rolling pipe with his, how guys stood up on the pipe rack and rolled pipe with their feet, and he was rolling the pipe with his feet in some sandals.
No, that was not
you.
If that was not me, if that was me, I would have shut the job down. I would have shut the job down and called Saudi's OSHA out and been like, "This is not okay.
HSC, this is not good.
This is not okay." Because that was my bad. Previously, I was HSC in the beginning of my career.
Okay,
that's right. So that wasn't me that sent you that.
Okay, because I saw that and I'm thinking to myself, it was typical.
Oh yeah,
you have some Filipino guy working the pipe rack, and he's on top of sandals rolling pipe.
And nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they're like, keep doing that. Get it done. I know. It's crazy.
It's probably changed by now, or you'd like to think.
I don't know how much it's changed. I doubt it, actually. I kind of doubt it. It's probably gotten worse with less travelers going there, so now they can do what they want. So let's get this kicked off. Let's tell us a little background about yourself, and let's talk about kind of some points that you want to bring up today. So
all right, good.
Kick us off.
Yeah, so, I go back a ways to the Champlin Petroleum Company. I was a summer hire for them.
Where'd you grow up?
In East Texas, Carthage, Texas.
Oh yeah, that's where my previous Pinergy was from. Yeah,
absolutely. So
Bernie's at.
Bernie
the movie.
Exactly. My mom and dad had a flower shop there in town and knew Bernie personally, and tied in with the funeral home and all that stuff. So
okay,
yeah. But that's it. Yeah, Carthage, Texas, and. Was a summer hire as well. I was going to Baylor University. A summer hire working for them was a roustabout, and kind of that was my exposure to the oil and gas industry.
That was your first exposure.
First exposure, and so they told me if I took one geology course my senior year that they'd offer me a job. Now this is 1980, right? So it's the height of the oil patch. It's booming. There's 4,500 rigs running or whatever the case. Can you imagine?
It was that much?
4,500 rigs.
I don't think you could be unsuccessful. I think you'd have to try not to be successful if there was 4,500 rigs as a salesperson.
Yeah, can you imagine? So we would be. I started off on a cementing crew, bulk truck, learning the business with BJ. Went to work for BJ right out of college. Champlin offered me a job, but I took $50 more a month. And
what made you go to the oil field? I mean, you did a summer internship doing some tough work, some tough labor. So what brought you back in? And
the last summer I was there, I worked half the summer in the district office in Longview with the district engineer doing, well analysis on wells they drilled in the Austin Chalk, and they were fracking those wells back then. They were doing frack work in the Austin Chalk in the 80s, in the 70s. And I don't know, just drawn to it. I like the people.
Yeah.
I interviewed with Bayreuth. I interviewed with a lot of different companies back then to
do what?
To go into sales.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to go into sales.
So did you graduate in marketing?
Yeah, in marketing management.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A degree in BBA in marketing management. And so, they said, hey, just go to work in the oil field. And salesman had taken Bill, and I'd tagged along to lunch, and so I got the visual.
Can I kind of pause you for a second? Because I am so fascinated about the oil field back in the 80s and all that stuff. And I love hearing stories. My old boss, Bubba Smith, would always tell me stories, and it just sounded so much fun. It sounded like it was just a great group of people, always like just friends and jokes and just, whatever it was. What was sales? What was your idea of sales back then?
Well, yeah, so it was...
What was sales back then? How about that?
It was, depending on the individual that you were calling on.
Okay.
So, if you called on somebody that was real business focused and they brought along a guy that was a summer hire doing some stuff, then it was professional, but it was fun, and you went out and you ate some barbecue and, that type of thing. But boy, soon did you realize that in the 80s, it was no holds barred, right? I mean, there were, and you've heard the stories, and that, I mean, I'm sure it goes on today, but there were people that were calling business would end up with boats in their driveway.
Oh,
Shotguns being delivered to their home. It was crazy. And I almost, because Champlin offered me a position to be the procurement manager in Giddings, Texas.
Before procurement was cool.
Right. And it's probably a good thing that I didn't go down that road, because I might have been in jail, because I probably would have been the biggest graft and corruption guy on the planet back in the 20s. Are you kidding me? Instead, I went into oilfield sales and probably should have been in jail many times as well.
Either you're going to be in jail or retired if you went procurement. So, okay, so you're going there, you're finding a job in sales. So after and then
so I went through a sales training program for 10 months and moved to Houston in 1981 and have been here ever since.
Really? Okay.
And spent 9 years with BJ, and through that, name change BJ Hughes to BJ Titan, owned by Dresser Industries, just the whole gamut. In 1989, left and went to work for oil and gas rental services out of Morgan City, Louisiana. A guy named Red Adams owned that company, still alive today, and still all 5 of his sons were involved in the business at one point in time. And I was with them from 1989 in sales, and then sometime after I'd been there a decade, I became the vice president of sales for that company. And then Alice Chalmers bought Red Adams Company, oil and gas rental, in December of 2006.
Okay.
And so I came over in that, and of course, it kind of takes me back on a little pause here. I really appreciate what you're doing, JP. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier. What you're doing is you're preserving the history of this industry and the fun that was had, but also the seriousness of each and every person you bring on as it relates to their experiences and the companies that they represent, or they've represented, or that their parents have represented, or it may even be third generations that grandparents represented. And there's a component of what you're doing that I think is vital to what really has become my passion. We'll get into that.
Well, do you feel like there's a certain elements of the oil field that I guess have that make it so great? Do you feel that there's certain elements that have kind of been kind of fizzled out, or kind of cut off, or not as active or as live anymore?
Well, I do, and there's no question. I think that certainly technology, whether it be cell phones or pagers, you started to go back to the day when it was a pager, but it used to be where you had to have almost face-to-face interaction with.
You had to
with each other in the industry, whether other salesmen and or certainly the operator.
Right.
Okay. And it had to go from the field level all the way up to the executive level and everything in between. And the executives with any oilfield service company was calling on the executives with the operator, and there was these relationships that were built, and through those relationships there was a lot of positive things that went on, whether related to charities or related, helping hands, helping people. And in these cycles that we've been through, we certainly have seen that played out.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it's lost. It's not lost, hopefully. What I'm saying is that because of technology and because of the state of our industry and because of the geopolitical, sabotage that's taken place as it relates to our industry and what we do.
Yep.
there's an educational component and a historical component to our industry that needs to be preserved and told. And I believe you're a part of that process in a very positive way.
Well, I just kind of like thank you first off. I just kind of like enjoyed this because it was one of those things. This kind of started. It's like, man, I've had so many great conversations, whether it's on the tee box, whether it's at lunch, whether it's in meetings, where it's like when we're not talking business, we're just kind of shooting the shit, talking about whatever. And it's been such like a great conversation. And I'm just trying to bring the person behind the position out there, you know what I mean? And whether it's stories and all that stuff. And that's the thing, though. That's what I love about our industry also. It seems like it drives you there, too. It's the relationships. It's the community. It's the families. And it's frustrating as a salesperson to, for example, host before this COVID, it was to host a happy hour and all that stuff. And you invite, 10 customers and, 9 of them have to go home to what it's just like, man, I just wish we had that stuff that I heard that, Bubba Smith talked about, or I wish we had the group, the community that we had, because look, I mean, my best friends are in the oilfield, but it's like, I wish that community was bigger and more active, if that makes sense. And not just showing up at OHH, which is a great thing, or AADE or IADC tournaments. I'm talking about like, on a Tuesday, like, hey, look, we're going to meet up with blah, blah, blah at XYZ, and that's a standard place to meet up, and we're all going to go there, we're going to connect. And that's the stuff I miss. Not the big events, but like the everyday get-togethers.
Absolutely. Well, you had Kelsey Dean on recently, and I love that podcast because he took me down memory lane. And, one of the things that he was talking about is when he broke in, and of course his dad and his uncle are in the business, and they're contemporaries of mine, and so I know those guys or know of those guys, and we've certainly been to golf tournaments together, and who knows whatever happy hours and bars over the years as well. Yeah. But he took me down memory lane, and I really enjoyed that podcast because he talked about guys like Mike Stetson and Tommy Fusel, and those guys were with Alice Chalmers, and they were part of a previous organization that Alice Chalmers had bought. And so when I came in and I helped merge those two sales organizations together, the oil and gas rental sales organization with that existing sales organization that was with Alice Chalmers in 2007. Yeah. And it was fun to get to know those guys. And so some of the things he talked about going by their shop and hanging out with them and the things that took place, I knew those were real. Yeah. And it brought back memories. But to be able to truly communicate that and hold on to that, I believe what you're doing, and hopefully what more of us can do, is kind of educate this generation that's behind us. You're in your 40s now, and you've got 20s and 30-year-olds that are in the business that just don't know some of the stories and some of the relationships and how they impacted this industry as it relates to what we talk about as family, what we talk about as fun, and what we talk about that really what it means to know your customer, to know the company, the service provider, to know them on that intimate level. Too often today, we're just that. We're just a service provider.
And that's the thing. And that's kind of what's frustrating too, because it's like we can go to work every day and do our job and clock out, go home, call it that. But I guarantee you that the level of enjoyment and fulfillment and connection and fun will be there if those relationships are, if you understand that a huge unspoken proponent of our industry is the friendships we make, or are the relationships we make, are your children going up with my children. It's one of those things where it's like we are a community, and it's not something that's like, look, whether you want to hear the old stories or not, make your own stories.
Absolutely.
Go make your own stories. Go do your own thing. Like I'm excited about that. Like start your own connections. Like build your own community, because that's what makes our industry so unique. If not, it's going to be a medical industry, where you can't do anything fun. It's just a transactional thing.
Absolutely. No, and a community, it's it. This oil and gas industry that we've been a part of, I've been a part of for 40 years, is absolutely that, a community. And I've got a lot of guys that have been there and done it and that are retired, and some that are still fighting the fight.
Oh, yeah, they want to sing.
Absolutely. And
they don't want to go to the house.
They don't want to go to the house. And so I am the biggest cheerleader for this industry and for those guys. And one of the things that, I started Sage Brothers Consulting back in May.
May of 20. So first off, May of 2020. So this is like a month and a half in of lockdown.
Yeah, of lockdown. And so I had left the oil and gas industry at the end of 2016 and joined a friend of mine in senior living.
Right.
And he had a couple of communities, senior living, assisted living, independent living, assisted living, memory care in Dallas, and he was going to expand into Houston and beyond. And so I joined him in the effort to help him do exactly that, and we did that. And so last year, it was at a place where I realized I missed oil and gas. And I only missed oil and gas, but I recognized the fact that I had the network and the skill sets to not just help build companies or change companies or transition companies. And I think transition is really the word I like to kind of stop and hone in on.
Why?
Because in everything we do, and certainly on the heels of the pandemic, whenever that may or may not come about in the near future, there's going to be transitions for companies companies are going to have to transition and go through a transition to get back on track.
Let me ask you a question, though, for listeners out there and for myself as well. When you say, how would I know if I was a company right now that needed guidance or something like that through transition? Is that something that you identify, or is that some companies that come to you say, hey, look, we need help? I mean, is that how does that?
Well, it's pretty obvious if you're struggling. It's pretty obvious that if you've got a company that has been successful but for whatever reason is struggling right now. Now, there are certainly rig count forces people to struggle. Lack of it.
That's right.
If you do it specifically in this industry. But there are all kind of businesses that are out there, and you know, I'm in the baby boomer generation, and there's a lot of us who've started companies, entrepreneurs in and out of the oil and gas industry, certainly in all facets of industry, all facets of business. And they're in that place in their life where they go, I've created a successful business, I've generated great income for my family, and I'm ready to spend some time and enjoy that. I don't want to fight the grind every day.
Right.
And I may have a son or a daughter or a family member, or I may want to try to transition this company to be prep it for sale, to be purchased by somebody else, or for whatever reason, but it's not quite ready for that, or we've gone through this period of struggle, and that company needs to be looked at and right-sized and refocused and restructured, and maybe some training take place, or some leadership oversight. There's a lot of those types of things that take place inside of a transition, from whatever the transition looks like. And it wears many hats. Transition is, for every company, whether it goes from pre-pandemic to post-pandemic, if you just focus on what took place in 2020. But there are all kinds of companies that are in transition from ownership, one person's ownership to another. And I'm kind of drawn to this idea because I'm not tied to the oil and gas industry. I've got experience outside of it.
Right.
And I've done consulting work for several years outside of the industry as well. In 2011, when I had a brief period of time when I'd left Archer after Archer had bought Allis-Chalmers, or merged with Allis-Chalmers. Seawell had merged with Allis-Chalmers. But it's a exciting time for me because I get to take what I understand about leadership and relationships and people, because it's all about people.
I agree.
People, and good people, and capable people, and people that are trained, and people that are motivated, and people that are empowered are the people that make businesses successful. And so if you get the right people and you get them communicating in the proper way with the right focus, then you can overcome obstacles that are getting in the way of your success.
And this is all just stuff that you've learned through real world experiences throughout your career, from when you started off to where you're at today.
Absolutely. In the different positions I've held with different companies, and the different companies that I've been with, and helping start a company back in 2012. and growing that company and adding companies and merging those companies in, through M&A. So all of that stuff has contributed to where I sit today and what I know I can do.
And that's that. So I looked at y'all's. I looked at Sage Brothers Consultant website. Sage
Brothers Consultant.
I'm fine. I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I looked at Sage Brothers Consultant website, and it's pretty comprehensive. It's how would I guess I'm trying to say is how would an end user understand that they need that besides the father handing it down to the son, or besides this to improve processes or improve whatever that it looks like. How do people identify that that it's might be time to open up a conversation with you or with Sage Brothers Consultant or a company like that to kind of come in and look at their processes, look at their people, look at what they're doing and how to transition or grow, or even just kind of shave off the fat that's slowing you down?
Well, I think that's the thing is that every individual, whether they're running a company or they're the founder of the company or they've acquired the company or whatever they happen to be, they're going to know that they're either stagnant or in decline, or they're not growing at the speed they want, or they've got some internal strife, or the culture's not right. There's all kind of factors that play into that, and they're going to know that. I mean, it's not going to be like they're going to go, I wonder if I have a problem.
Right.
They're going to know that something's not right. And so that's where it's just a matter of first and foremost having a conversation. If they know who I am and they know through my website or LinkedIn page that this is my experience and this is what I'm doing, it's just a simple, let's have a conversation.
Okay.
And then if Mark Patterson can't convince them that I can help them in the direction that they want to go in whatever transition and whatever that looks like, and quite honestly, if I can't, I'll tell you, you probably need a forensic accountant.
Right.
You probably need somebody else. What I do is this, and I can help you do that.
So tell me walk me through on kind of, I guess, from January 2020 until May 2020 is when I guess you started, right?
Right.
Can you walk me through the process and kind of your mindset and kind of how, like, I guess, jumping and taking the plunge of starting your own company, building the website, establishing your contacts, telling what you're doing, kind of the whole business process behind that, and kind of what was some of the stuff that you kind of met with resistance, and kind of what the stuff that kind of lit the fire in your ass and kind of propelled you to do it?
Well, so yeah, there really wasn't any specific thing other than I knew I wanted out of the senior living business.
Okay.
And my
that gets old.
Yeah, there you go. Nice pun. Thank you.
My dad.
Yeah. No, and the owner of that company and I had been friends for a long, long time, and he knew me, and so he knew I wasn't happy in the process.
Right.
I'd done what I had promised I'd do. We'd opened up the communities here in Houston, and we'd moved on, and so he just said, Mark, he said, if you're missing the old patch or you want to do something different, I'm all for it. I'm behind you 100%. And so it was one of those things where I knew I didn't want to work. I'd worked for somebody. I'd worked for somebody my whole career. I'd had a boss.
Yeah.
Even though I was president of a company and COO of a company, I had still had a boss. I reported to a board. I reported to somebody. I thought, you know what? If I start my own company and I can truly help people and I can serve people in this capacity, then I'm working for myself, but I'm working for everybody.
Yeah.
Whoever it is, I'm still working for somebody, but I want to help them and serve them in whatever capacity.
And you can do it in the way you want to.
And I can do it in the way I know I can be successful in doing it. And so that was the thing that motivated me, and my wife was 100% behind that, and
that helped
pushed
tremendously.
Me, no question. And so what 2020 did is it gave us the time to put it together, because everything had kind of become stagnant. Well, let's wait and see what's happening.
Yep.
And so that's really the situation a lot of companies are in now. They're still in that deal, but we're still in that mode, but we're about to start to see things to open up and a transition to take place. And so it's in that transition that I think that I can be of service to a lot of different people.
And you and I talked about this before we came on, that during times like this, whether it's during COVID, it's when everything got locked down, it sucks. Can't see your customers, can't do this, can't do that. New way of doing business, new way of this, new way of doing that. And it was very frustrating for a lot of people because the tools that people that have used historically, you can't use. And we talked about, like, during COVID, starting something new. You, a company, me, a podcast. You this, me that. It was one of those things where it's like you can either look at the situation like, yes, this sucks. Let's dive into that suckiness and just stay in the mud and just, woo-hoo, let's wait till the rain. Or you can try to do something with that. And it's one of those things where it's like, it doesn't matter if you get out there and pursue your passion. I'm not saying like I'm going to start a company in your thing, or even it's a side thing, whether it's a podcast or whether it's hosting something at your house for getting customers over for steaks and all that, whatever that is. There's ways that you can actually interject some new life, new fire, new motivation, and connect on different ways. So it's kind of how you look at your circumstances of everything, in my opinion. I
agree, and it also has to do with the people that are in your camp or in your corner, or who are helping you and empowering you. And that's kind of where the name Sage Brothers came from. Sage being wise, but brothers being that I have this band of brothers. I have this brotherhood with so many people who have been encouraging and have been with me for years, whether it be as a customer or as a mentor. And when I told them that I was going to start this company, it was amazing how much encouragement I got to do exactly that.
That's awesome.
And so that was just another confirming thing. I mean, and it was confirmed when I got a call from one of the shareholders, one of the brothers that of Lee C. Moore.
Right.
So I sit on the board of directors of Lee C. Moore, and that came about last year as well. Right after I started the company, I joined that board in July, and it was a great story on how it came about. But that's where I really got this passion about the history of our industry, is because I didn't know that Lee C. Moore was founded in 1907, and that some of the first steel that they produced was put into the Brooklyn Bridge, and then down the road into the 1930s I have a note here. I wanted to be specific about it because, there's such a long and storied history with Lee C. Moore. It started drawing me to the history of this industry. Like in 1907, it was founded in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
And then
the Colonel Drake, right?
No. I'm talking about the company Lee C. Moore.
Wait, I'm talking about the first one. I just talked about that. That was in the 1800s. Yeah, okay.
Right. So in 1907,
it was a test.
This
you
company, I passed. So they were the first to engineer and build a steel derrick. It was wooden. All the derricks were wooden before that. So they first to build a steel derrick, and then they would build a cantilever utilizing the drawworks to lower and raise it. And that was in 1912. They patented that system of clamping steel, bracing steel pipe legs to build a steel oil derrick. And then from there, they in the 1920s, they became a prominent designer and manufacturer of steel oil derricks, and then they helped adopt the API standards for that process. And in 1936, their design team developed a jackknife derrick, which was comprised of welded steel.
Oh man, we know the jackknife derrick over here.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so they were the first to do that. The cantilever mast, and then there was there at the Petroleum Exposition in Tulsa in 1938. So there's all kind of history that goes with this company, and they're still in business today. And so they called me up, and they were going through this transition, and they wanted me to consider joining the board. And there's four brothers that are the four shareholders, and I said to John Woolslayers, the third of the four boys, he worked with us at Alice Chalmers back in 2008, 2009, 2010. And it was his dad's company, and the boys had gotten that company back, and just recently they had always been minority owners, but now they're the majority shareholders, the four owners. And I said, John, I'd love to join the board, but I won't do that unless all the shareholders, since there's only 4 of you, if I meet them and they all check the box. And so I met with them in June, and they did. And so we started the process of that transition of where that company had been and what they were doing in the current marketplace of 2020 with.
You have to look at it.
All the masts and derricks have been built for who knows why. There may be one built here and one built there, and we want to be the company that builds those. But certainly we had to look at diversification. We had to look at other things to say, hey, we want this company, Lee Seymour, that was started in 1907, to remain in this industry, serving the OEM. There's tons of masts and derricks out there that Lee Seymour was the OEM, and we want to maintain those relationships with those companies. And Scott Keller's company is one of those companies that we're doing that with.
That's got to be a fun, kind of engaging conversation, though, to kind of sit down and say, all right, guys, we've been in business for 115 years doing X, Y, Z. We're faced with unprecedented times, the new normal. I hate that. But how do we transition? How do we move forward right now? And I think that's probably such an innovative, engaging conversation where literally ideas are welcome.
Well, it was, and in fact, it was besides joining the board, it became one of the first consulting jobs that I actually did.
Oh, really?
Last year, and it was. And so I spent some 3 months working with their new president and CEO to help position that company and transition that company to where they are today, and with a stability and the ability to grow and thrive in the international marketplace as well as domestically. And so it's exciting. And so as I was having these conversations with other people about the history, just like I am you, and then you invite me to come to the podcast and be a part of it, and knowing what I believe you're doing as it relates to holding on to our history and passing it down. And I reached out to the IADC to say, hey, what's out there and available that y'all might have, and so the president of the IADC and I had a great conversation.
This by the way, listeners out there, we chatted about this briefly. This is pretty cool stuff, so keep going.
So he said, we've got this website, this interactive website, and I want to really promote it because I think it's something that we who are listening, who are obviously believe in the oil and gas industry and the importance of it in our world still today, as well as in the United States of America. I think this can be a real educational tool for not only us and those that are coming behind us, but it can be a real educational tool that we could use for friends, family, and those others that are outside of our industry and our sphere of influence to say, we still matter. This industry still matters. And one of the things that, JP, before I get into the website, JP, that really inspired me as well was seeing your
my daughter.
Your daughter.
She's
you
a girl.
Took her.
No, so he's talking about a post I made on LinkedIn. I think a week or 2 weeks ago. I brought my daughter to the Houston Museum of Natural Science, and on the 4th floor there's an excellent. I know people are thinking now. There's like, man, I've been to that, 4 or 5 years ago. It was on the 2nd floor. It was very dark, very dingy, run down. It was kind of it was gross walking through, you know what I mean? But they moved it to the 4th floor, and this wonderful exhibit on energy, hydrocarbons, and then it goes into renewables and what hydrocarbons are part of what medicine tool, and it's so fun. It's new, it's interactive, and my daughter calls it, hey, I want to go where Daddy works, because I told her I worked offshore, and this Daddy was on this rig and this type of rig, go make a stand, whatever. And then, but anyway, it's one of those things where it's like, it's very enjoyable. It's interactive. It's very clean. It's cool, and I posted a picture, something about there, because on this podcast, we discussed being advocates for our industry and educating and having conversations versus planting your flag and saying, you need us. It's conversation. It's not about being the bully at the table. It's about being welcomed to the table. We want to get to that point where it's like, hey, oil and gas, come here, sit down. We need you. And that was kind of the start of that. And you just brought up this website before that you're about to talk about, which first time I've heard about it, which is frustrating.
It is, because the first time I'd heard of it as well. And it's a website that's the IADC put out there several years ago, I think back to 2018 or 17. It's called Drilling Matters, and it's drillingmatters.iadc.org. So drillingmatters.iadc.org. And it is just like you're talking about. It's an interactive website.
It's amazing.
That you can go through and you can learn all about the rig. You can learn all about the drilling process. You can learn all about the uses that oil and natural gas are in our environment, in our country, in our world, in our culture, and how vital those things are. And that's the part that we are getting hammered about, in the media and in this idea of green. Not that the green's not good, because green is good, but green can't take place if we go away.
That's the thing. There is no light switch to turn on and off. There is no the infrastructure cost to establish X number of charging stations. It's just not there. And so the website he's talking about, again, is drillingmatters.iadc.org. And I'm going to put a link to this I'll probably even make a post about this in the meantime, because this is pretty. So I'll put a link to it when we release this episode. But it talks about who needs us and why, what do we do, how we provide. And there's one here that I think is so relevant and pertinent to it today. It goes, what would a world without oil and gas look like? And it just kind of talks about the influence and the impact of oil and gas and how it provides energy. And anyway, really great website. And I'm definitely going to start promoting this, because I think this is exactly kind of what we've been talking about around the Rotary, this type of stuff.
Absolutely. And so I'm thrilled that I have the opportunity to bring that up. And talking to Jason McFarland, the president of IADC, he also, told me about, in at least 10 of the universities, LSU, A&M, and others, they have, they have the student chapters. Student chapters. And so, they're in the universities, promoting our industry and educating those that are thinking about entering our industry. But if we don't take up the mantle here and stand erect and try to educate those that are in our sphere of influence about how vital this industry still is, then we're not doing what we should do.
Well, we're also relinquishing control, where we allow someone else to write what we're all about.
Absolutely. So the IADC's got that Drilling Matters website, the interactive website. So it's awesome, and so we're really excited about. I'm really excited about being able to promote that.
It's a great website. I kind of want to go down different rabbit holes with you, but before I do, I kind of want to talk to you about. Go back to real quick one last question with Sage Brothers, unless you want to discuss it further. What are you seeing any common themes of trends when it comes to companies transitioning right now? Is there like a hot trend, like, work from home, or I don't know what that looks like, or transitioning to this type of, growth? Is there a trend that you're seeing, or is it just kind of at ad hoc, a la carte base?
Well, we certainly have seen it in 2020, and that is, it's sad, because the small businessman has really truly been the one that's been harmed in this. The Amazons and the Costco's and the Walmarts of the world.
If you start getting me on that, right. If you start me on that road, I don't want to start it. It's right. The mom and pop shops, the independent small businesses have been screwed.
Absolutely. And the bars and the restaurants and all that, every facet of it.
Oh, but Walmart's good, Amazon's good. That's all good.
Well, I'm not saying we didn't need those. We did, but we should have been able to keep those other businesses open and vibrant as well.
Amen.
And I think we missed it. And so I think that there's a lot of business in it. And I tell you, I think one of the biggest industries that's is going to really see some areas of change is in the real estate business. Not so much maybe commercial real estate, hopefully, but certainly in these office buildings, because even the companies that are going to keep office space, they're only going to need half of it, because they realize now that they can people can work from home some, people can work from home a lot, people can work
3 years ago this wasn't possible. 5 years ago 10 years ago this would have been an imagination. it's possible now. And now companies have been forced to do that. They're understanding that now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm working with a company right now, too, that's Imperial Utility Services. And they're basically do a full analysis of whether it be commercial real estate or even residential. They do analysis on your utility bills. And then they can direct you give you options on how to lower your utility costs. And of course, in the real estate market, for big buildings and stuff, those are contractual. But when the contract expires, you can utilize this company's services to really make sure that you hone in on what the best rates are for you, whether it be electrical, gas, or whatever. And so I'm working with that company to help develop a sales process and develop some other things. And so
that's got to be so exciting to get involved in other industries, other businesses. And you know what I like about that, honestly? So besides, you helping people out and helping companies out, that's the point of your business. Love it, dig it, I love it. But what I also appreciate more is that you have history in the oil field. And you are talking to people that are not in the oil field, that may not have any contact with the oil field, and you're there, and you're such a good representative of our industry. I think that's also a great part of it.
Well, I appreciate that. I want to be that ambassador for sure as it relates to this industry because I grew up in it. It's been so good for me and my family. I mean, I've got the 5 boys.
Oh, yeah.
And so I really appreciate this industry and what it's done for me and my family, and I want to see it flourish again. I've got too many friends that are still in this industry, like you, JP, that we want to see it come back and flourish. And I think there is those opportunities are there. It will look different. It will look different than it did, before. And so many industries and so many companies are going to be just like that. And so,
well, how's it going to be different? In your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think what we just talked about, how before you couldn't operate from home like you can today. I mean, Zoom meetings have truly changed the way things.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And podcasts and these types of communications are very much real and are going to continue to thrive and grow. The key component, I think, is we have to figure out a way to still bring people together because it's through relationships and through the interaction of people and personality that companies really can be all that they can be.
And you know what? That's, to me, look, I think the IDC events are awesome. I think the AD events are awesome. The oilfield Helping Hands, awesome. I really do love industry events. That being said, it's not going to be 3 industry events a year and we call it a community. This is one of those things, just like Kelsey Dean was talking about. Was it SNAP?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's these type of things where it's like contact 4 or 5 of your sales buddies, 6 or 7 of your sales buddies, and all that stuff. Have them all invite 1 or 2 customers. Y'all meet up somewhere. Do this. Don't wait on the industry events to do your groups and all that stuff. I would advise everyone to set your own little kind of, not cliques, that's a bad term, but I would say set your own little functions up. Get together, start meeting people, just like you used to, get the relationships going.
Right, and it was very important pre-pandemic, but I think as we come out of this, people will have gotten into that. Oh, I'm not leaving the house.
I don't need to talk to Mark.
Right.
I haven't talked to him in 9 months.
That's where we're going to have to really encourage people to get back out. And if we have to do it under the guise of, hey, we really need to help our good bar friend down here, our bartender out down here who needs employment, use whatever it is that you need to use, but let's get people back out and back into interacting with each other personally, because I think that is, if we don't do that, then we're going to have really lost something that we in this industry have certainly enjoyed over many years.
Well, I agree with that. I mean, here's the deal. If we do this whole work from home thing and Zoom thing, I'd be hesitant to open up about issues with, my family, my daughter. Oh, I'm going through this. Oh, this happened to my dad, or this happened. Those vulnerable conversations that you have with customers or with other fellow salespeople, or whether they're procurement, whoever they are in the industry, those genuine vulnerable conversations, they don't exist over Zoom. They really don't. You know what I mean? But if you're in those group settings and you're talking to people and you pull someone aside and you start talking, that's when those connections are made. That's when those connections are deepened. When you have those real life, non-Zoom bullshit conversations where it's like, it might just be, it might be one of those things where you're being, vulnerable, or you might be just kind of providing advice to someone else who's coming to you, but you're not going to have that opportunity if it's over Zoom, if it's over your computer screen.
That's right. Really, it's all about service and serving mankind and serving your fellow man. And inside of community, you can do that best.
Yes.
And it's really difficult to do that on a Zoom call. No question.
You can't do it on a Zoom call.
Right.
in my opinion.
Right. No, I agree. And that's why we're sitting across the table from each other. Because let me ask you a question.
What else can be done?
It's really about the people. So you really have to get face, and that's one of the strengths of what I do, what I bring to the table with Sage Brothers is I can sit in a room with people and I can facilitate the conversations, and with the proper communication, get to the place where we've identified whatever the issues are and how we need to get to the other side, or what steps we need to take to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
I think that's what my real strength is, but it can't be done, afar. It has to be done in the mix.
Well, you're not going to understand the complete picture
unless you're in the and that comes with evaluation and analysis, no question.
Right. And the thing is, though, if you're talking about getting out there, starting something, don't wait for someone else to do it. You do it. And I'll tell you what, if it sucks, do it again. If it sucks again, keep doing it.
Yeah. Like you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, I'm doing a comedy satire conversation tonight on Clubhouse. It's about Terminators and the Resistance. Terminators running on renewables and the Resistance running on oil and gas. And I'm making the comparison, kind of
fun
stuff like that. It's just a bullshit conversation. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it is. And I kind of forget where I was going to this, but it's one of those things where it's like, you got to have these you got to connect people. It can't be all business. It can't be over Zoom and just like, okay, well, good talk. Talk to you soon. Boop. That's it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, it is. But I hope that we get back to that place where we're not all sitting at home doing Zoom calls. And unfortunately, right now we still are. But we must transition to a different place, and we need to do it sooner than later.
Because whether you like it or not, the oil and gas industry isn't a steel industry; it's a people industry.
Absolutely,
I agree with that.
No doubt. There's some great books out there too that I have just read.
Well, are you a reader or are you an audio listener?
Well, I am an audio listener. How
is that going, by the way? Because I downloaded Audible in November, and I'm like, okay, boom. I got a credit. Oh, that's one credit a month. I'm going to breeze through like $5. I'm still on my first credit.
Well, so I all the audio listening to books I used to do when I traveled out to West Texas.
Right.
So from here to West Texas, I'd drive it and I'd listen to books, but as of late, I've been doing a lot more reading. But there's some books that I've read years ago that I would highly recommend as it relates to the history and education of this industry. And one of those books is The Seven Sisters. And
what's that about?
It's about the history of OPEC and the oil and gas giants that were in this country. The breakup of the Standard Oil and how that all ended up with the different companies, and how then they started the exploration of oil and gas in Saudi Arabia. And so it's all about that, and it's called The Seven Sisters by Anthony Sampson, 1975, The Great Oil Companies and the World They Made.
Okay.
It's a really interesting book about the history of all of that, where we've come from.
What else you got?
And then the prize, I saw that on your bookshelf earlier. Daniel Yergin, 1991, An Epic Quest for Oil, Money, and Power.
So 1991, that was right when wasn't that the Gulf War? I was 11 years old, so wasn't that the Gulf War?
Yeah.
So that was written during that time.
Yeah.
So okay, the prize.
And then the latest one, it just came out last year, and it's Blood and Oil, Bradley Hope and Justin Scheck.
What's that about?
It's about the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and all that's transpired in the last 4 or 5 years as it relates to him and the whole movement in the Middle East and specifically in Saudi to capitalize on the oil, but to transition, there's the word again, transition that the company's reliance on oil money into more, and to take Saudi Arabia into, with releasing, the restrictions surrounding movies and the Western culture and the covering of women. All that stuff.
Which I had someone on. There's a big push pull for that. There's the old school people that, and this obviously I'm American, so I can't speak for Saudis, but there was a pull and push between the younger generation who has cell phones, who's texting, Snapchatting, and there's the older generation who wants to preserve the historical ways and all that stuff. Everyone that comes on the podcast always talks about these career development, personal growth books, all that stuff. I love how you really enjoy the history and kind of the nuts and bolts of our industry, kind of how we came from where we were to where we're at.
Well, certainly that's kind of where
I love that, though.
My passion is right now. I love that. Yeah, I think previously in the, maybe a decade ago, I started really got into a friend of mine turned me on to John Maxwell and all things leadership. John Maxwell. He's written many books on leadership.
Okay, is that okay? Go on.
And so anyway, I became a real that was one of the things that really transitioned me from being the leader who I thought I was to the leader that I wanted to be. And it's really been probably the one thing that's been instrumental in my life to help me be the Sage Brothers and to group in those individuals who have been instrumental in my life to help me in my consulting business. Because that's the thing, if something comes up and somebody's got a question that I can't answer, I've got a whole host of a network of people, of brothers that are out there that I can call and get input from. So it's all about the relationships and servant leadership. And so John Maxwell, I would absolutely encourage the listening base to pull up some John Maxwell's books and listen to those on tape. Look at how old am I? On tape.
You listen it on a record. But make sure it's before the sun goes down because the power's going to shut off. So it's like a Roughneck Jerry in the studio.
You asked me when I first came in, what's the kind of music do you like? Classic rock?
Time out, buddy. No. So I've got my daughter's favorite song now is TNT by AC/DC.
Oh,
She's
there you
7.
go.
She loves. I'm trying to get her to differentiate between Black Sabbath with Ozzy and Ozzy being solo. So this is a big deal in our household. Okay, all right. No, but what I love about this is like, people come on and don't get me wrong, I love all these personal growth books and I love hearing about them and all stuff. I just haven't gotten into them. I just haven't. I don't know why. I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like, man, I'm trying to just be me, do my own thing. I'm trying to see what works and all that stuff. I don't want to be kind of read a book and kind of be constructed to this and there's some great podcasts and great books out there that talk about personal growth and development, and whether it's marketing, whether it's relationships, whether it's this and that technical side. But I really do. I love the history side of our industry because not a lot of people understand the history side of our industry. And there's actually a very good Houston, Texas local book called The Big Rich, and it's all those. Have you heard about that book?
No, I haven't.
It's all these cats back in the day that started the companies, and like I'm talking about like building like a mansion for your mistress in like River Oaks district. You know what I mean? Like all these crazy stories about like hiring these jets to take like the crazy. But that's the thing, is the history of our industry that I think is fascinating. Like when I hear Bubba tell the stories, and when I hear you tell you, I love hearing that side of it. To me, that. I don't know why. I just enjoy that.
Well, I can tell you this: Bubba Smith's forgotten more stories than he's told.
Oh, God,
because he's lived them.
I love what a guy! I was so happy to work on. That was the toughest conversation I had when I broke up with him. I thought the toughest conversation in my life. I've had two very difficult professional conversations. The first one is when I left Noble Drilling to go to Alice Chalmers with you, and it wasn't a tough. It was a tough decision because I felt the relationships were there. I felt that was my family. You know what I mean? Like those were my people, and I loved every person that worked. You know what I mean? That was the toughest conversation was breaking up with Bubba.
Oh, I bet.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no doubt, because he's a great guy.
Oh my
Love
God.
that dude.
Love the cat.
Yeah,
And then that's the thing though. I love the stories about our history, and so I love how you're telling you're plugging historical industry books right now, because I think that should probably get more attention.
Well, if you get people who are listening to this that then say, okay, well, yeah, maybe I should look into a little more, because the industry is getting beat up. Our industry is getting just crucified.
I don't think you need to go more into that, because we know that.
Right.
I think every listener out there.
So if we can be educated and we can bring a positive energy and point people to the history and point people to community and talk about these things in a positive way and point people to the IADC website and talk about companies like Lee C. Moore that have been building masts and derricks for, since 1907. I mean, that is the type of thing that will keep this industry moving forward until the world wakes up and says, we need these guys. Now, we're moving in a different direction, but we still need these guys, and we need them for another 30, 40, 50 years.
I don't see that happening, though, Mark. I really don't. This is why. I don't see people waking up, because nobody likes admitting that they're wrong, right?
Correct.
No one likes admitting, you know what? I looked at that kind of incorrectly. And the last 5 years, I was bashing the oil and gas industry. I was looking at that wrong, so maybe I need to come back to that and think that there are people too, and that's an industry that are people too, and that provide affordable electricity. I think what's going to happen is people are going to wake up and they're having blackouts and brownouts and not getting AC, not heating their homes, or it's costing them an arm and a leg to fill up their car, and they still won't say, "Oh, I support the oil and gas." They'll bitch about something else, like, "Oh, well, because of." I know. It's
a scary thought.
It's an uphill battle, but that leads me to have those conversations where it's not us versus them. It's not that. It's like, dude, we ain't going anywhere. We're not. Right. So just understand, like, we are doing a great job with carbon capture. We're with our ESG. We need to do it. If we're not doing ESG, you're not getting any capital these days. So we are your neighbors. We are contributing. We are raising the energy poverty level of the world.
And if you take us out, and when I say us, I'm talking about the United States of America. If you take the domestic oil and gas industry out, which is the direction and where they're trying to force us, somebody's going to backfill that position, and the people that backfill it aren't going to be as green as we are. They're not going to capture
You tell them no about the flood right now.
No,
you're right.
Exactly. That's the problem, is that the Chinese and the Pakistanis and the Indians and the Middle Eastern countries that are producing oil and natural gas, and good for it. I mean, that's great. They should absolutely develop their natural resources.
But their regulations are different.
And so you're going to take us out of it, and we're the most environmentally friendly industry on the planet. Oil and gas industry on the planet.
I agree. And that's the thing, though. It's like, unfortunately, we have such a stigma about us in our industry that we're these, roughnecks that come and don't give a shit about dumping this and clean. That's not. Everyone I've met is a steward of the environment. They don't mess around. They're environmentalists, and that's one of those things that, again, it's just a constant. That's one of those things we have to communicate.
Right, and that's been one of the positive things that I think has transpired over the last 20 to 25 years, is that we in this industry have been educated to the place where we are environmentally friendly, and HSE, health, safety, and environment, is a top priority for operators and service companies alike.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then, I completely agree with that. So, we're coming up on about what else are we going to talk about right now? You have some other stuff. What else you got?
Well, I did.
We're in no rush.
Okay, good. I did want to plug. You always have these guests. These guests bring in these nice bottles of whiskey.
I want to plug this
and the wine, and I sit there and I go, oh my goodness, how awesome is that? And then I think, yeah, I got a couple of boys in that business, and I'm going to reach out to them.
When I say, okay, so for those that are listening, when Mark, the generation gap is obviously shown. Mark says, I got a couple of boys that are in this business. To us, that means I got a couple. To me, that means I got a bunch of close friends, but you actually have sons.
I do.
So Mark shows up today, and he brings this beautiful display case of Balcones, bourbon, and I know it's from Waco.
Yes.
So can you talk to me about this?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. Let's plug your son real quick, both of them.
Well, okay. Well, so my oldest son, Jared, he's 36, and he works for a company in Waco called David Mayfield Selections.
Okay.
And that company started in 2013 in Austin, and then it moved to Waco. And their whole deal is they import and buy wine that is made predominantly by small family-owned type wineries all around the world: Italy, France, Australia, South America, Texas. I mean, and also in California, and they it's low intervention, small batch type of wine, and it's a kind of, I kind of relate it. Of course, I get my Jared says, "Well, Dad, you really can't look at it that way," and I go, "Well, this is the way I look at it." It's kind of like the craft beer industry. 20, maybe even 10 years ago, it was like this thing that wasn't really out there, but everywhere. And it's just now it's everywhere and it's blown up. Well, this is kind of this whole low intervention wine kind of thing. It's kind of this natural wine kind of phenomenon.
Well, you're actually seeing kind of like a what's it called, Slayton Mill, like this, like even these like these, not pyramids, like the Rodan and Fields, whatever you want to call it. Like they are selling these natural wines that have none of sulfates and none of this, none of that. And like it's this grassroots. So that is kind of gaining popularity.
It is, and that's kind of that's the direction. And David has been really successful in doing this, and he distributes to all the major metropolitan areas and surrounding areas in Texas. And
would Kelsey Dean like it?
Well, he's a California guy, and I brought you a Californian.
You did, which was phenomenal.
Tonight. And so Kelsey, well, here's the thing. You're going to have to let Kelsey make that decision.
I think what we have to do, we have to get you and Kelsey up here, and we'll open that. We'll have a
Oh, that'd be
together.
sweet.
I'm going to save that, actually.
That'd be sweet.
We'll
Awesome. Good. I'd love to meet Kelsey. That'd be great.
Wait, you never met Kelsey?
I never met Kelsey.
You
just heard him on the podcast.
I love that.
Just heard him on the podcast and loved his stories and loved y'all taking me down memory lane.
Oh man, I thought you knew. That's what's so cool. It's like I love. So again, you hear this podcast and I feel like you know the guy because you come in and talking like him.
Like I said, I know his uncle Bubba, but I didn't know his dad. But there were certainly contemporaries and know a ton of people together.
We'll open that up. He lives right down the road. We'll get him here next week.
That'd be fun. And then
let's talk about your other son.
Yeah, my second son. He's at Balcones. He's been there for several years. They opened that distillery in Waco, Texas in 2008. And
what's a fun fact about that?
Well, the cool thing about that is that they then produced the very first Texas whiskey that had been released it since Prohibition. And I don't know exactly what year that was, but it was sometime, after you make it and it sits there and it gather some age and bourbon. Yeah, exactly. And they have 6 core whiskey and whiskey expressions, and they do another 12 to 20 additional ones, special releases, and they do rum. And they just recently, this last year, got into the beer making business because for their tasting room, you want to have something other than just whiskey at your tasting room.
Everyone's gonna get twisted off with just whiskey.
But I tell you,
So what does he do there?
He's the operations manager. Actually, he's the head brewer, and he's the operations manager, and he does all the. So he's ordering all the barley and all the hops and all the whatever it is they order. Of course, I don't know that business, so I'm ignorant when it comes to distilling spirits. But
no, yeah, but at the same time, man, that's such a cool.
It's fascinating.
That is.
And I've had, I've taken some people up there and done the behind the scenes tour a couple of times, and it's a cool experience, and I learned a lot, but then I forget a lot too. So.
Well, after the tasting room, I usually forget a lot too. So, did they both go to Baylor?
They did. My oldest went to University of Houston downtown.
Okay.
And the second son went to Baylor, but they both went to Truett Seminary. So they both went in thinking they were going to go into ministry, and then they both went into spirits, liquor.
well, one person got into the wine, so I get that. You know what I mean? But then I guess if I guess if you're gonna have a church in Texas, you got to go with some bourbon and whiskey.
Well,
So,
absolutely,
I get
absolutely.
that. Well, I mean, that's great. I would love to take a trip there and honestly just like visit there.
I can set that up.
some. I'd love that. Bring some customers and all that. So
Yeah,
I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Enjoy it. Yeah. Get a little party van, go up there and get a designated driver, and everybody'd have a big time, no question.
I mean, don't threaten me with a good time. All right, you know that.
Absolutely.
What else you got?
I tell you what, I have. You got any questions for me?
I think I've been talking. Let me ask you a question. I guess, if I'm sitting here and I'm hearing you and I'm listening to this, it's like, oh, relationships, network, how it used to be, if I'm kind of sitting here in my car at the house and I'm hearing this, what would you tell me that regarding, I guess, the impact of relationships, and the second thing, pursuing them, if you don't mind? I mean, how to pursue those type of relationships, and I guess the impact of them.
Well, you doing it, and you know how to do it, and I haven't. I know in a previous conversation I think we had maybe last year, you talked about how during the pandemic y'all have actually brought people in here into your offices, your office out of a house in the Heights, and it's awesome, by the way. But how y'all brought friends and customers and just community in and cooked some steaks and brought in some lasagna or whatever, and y'all drank a bunch of wine in this conference room right here and enjoyed, because the restaurant happened to be shut down or people weren't comfortable in going. But even if you did, it wouldn't be the same because of the environment. That's what it's all about.
I don't think I'm going back. I mean, honestly, if I'm entertaining customers, unless they want to go, I don't think I'm going back to restaurants, just because it's such an intimate time here. The thing is, you gotta use what works. Whether that's having a customer and their wife over to your house for dinner, bring them to your home, or whether that's opening up your garage and having a crawfish boil, or whether that's a small, whatever you want to do. I don't care. But it's using what works for you, and you just think outside the box and how to get people here. What would you want to do?
Well, and that's and that goes back to the history of our industry and the service industry as specifically is. I promise you, this industry, oil and gas, and the service industry in particular, does it different and has always done it different than any other industry that's out there. Look, there's entertainment that goes on, no question, but I would argue that there are more people, and have been people, in this industry, in our industry, that have entertained in their home where their wife cooked the crawfish etouffee and served it herself, and you sat around the table whether it was a Friday night or a Saturday night in the middle of pick a month.
Yeah.
And it was for no other reason because you wanted to get to know that person and build that relationship with them. And that's how so many relationships have been formed. And I've got countless numbers of people I call close friends because we were able to do exactly that, because it was promoted by the companies that I worked for. And it's been, and the Bob Zombreckers of the world grew up and have passed that on, and you've witnessed it, and you're part of it now. And we need to pass that on to the next generation as well, because it's easy to take a customer to dinner, and his wife, or without his wife. But it's another step to take his wife, but it's another step to have them in your home.
You will not get a better bang for your buck when they're in your, because they're not a customer anymore.
They're not a customer.
They're your guest. They're
Absolutely.
your guest. They're your friend. They're your family at that point. I agree with that.
Absolutely.
I do. And I think we need to be doing that. I don't think you need. I mean, there's a lot of people. It's like, oh, JP, next time you do a dinner, I want to do it, which is great. Whatever, I'm down with that. But at the same time, it's like during that time, what can you do this week or next week that's kind of outside the box? Can you go to Loft 18, hit some virtual golf balls? Can you do a Zoom happy hour if the customer's on? Can you do just don't wait for someone to plan that for you. Just kind of just think about, okay, I don't really know this. I've sat across the table with this guy. I don't know this guy that well, but I'm going to invite them to this 3-person happy hour I'm having at my house. And we're sitting outside having a beer and throwing horseshoes or whatever that looks like. Just do something.
Do something. And, you mentioned, it's funny that you mentioned this, because I heard of a company that on Friday afternoons, they have kind of a post-week gathering. This is the company where they're on the Zoom, and they all have a cocktail of choice at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon in front of them in the Zoom call, and they're catching up on what they did that previous. At the end of that week. And so it's kind of that. Okay, even in my house, even on a Zoom call, we can still socialize on some level through in the engagement. So,
I think I completely agree with that. So, Mark, I want to thank you so much for coming on again, everyone. This is Mark Patterson with the founding and owner of Sage Brothers Consulting. Again, they come in, they kind of they discuss. I think transition was a
big word, wasn't it?
Big word today, but again, honestly, just what we talking about relationships. I highly recommend just reaching out to him and sitting across the table and literally just shooting the bull with him, because it's very entertaining. It's you never know where you're going to go down, and it's always fun. So I strongly advise you to reach out to him, whether it's on LinkedIn or anything like that. And if you want to plug your website real quick or your email,
it's literally sagebrothersconsulting.com, and I would encourage you to go to the website, my LinkedIn page, Mark Patterson, Sage Brothers Consulting, and if you have a need, or if you just want to have a conversation about your company or even personally something you're going through, I'd be more than happy to give you some of my time, and we can talk about how I might be of benefit and be able to serve you out there. JP, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate you, your friendship, and what you're doing, because I do think it's important that we in this industry talk about our history, talk about community, talk about relationships, and talk about how we can advance this industry from where we are today to where we want to be, in the future.
Well, Mark, you've been so pivotal to my, where I'm at today, by taking a chance on me and bringing me on to Alice Chalmers, and I thank you for being here. And again, I love your message. I love what you're talking about relationships, because you and we have that same passion.
We do.
Same passion, which is great. And I want to thank you, and I guess thank you for coming in. I guess we'll be in touch. I wish you success with your semi-new endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're coming up about 10 months in, so 9 months in. So, all right, I guess we'll talk to you soon, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.